Under lock and key in a darkened corner, the letters are piling up. Perhaps too fast for number 10, though not fast enough for Theresa May's critics. If the chairman of the 1922 committee receives 48 letters, a confidence vote in the Prime Minister would be triggered. And to win that, she needs the support of at least 158 MPs. Today, the Prime Minister spoke in more personal terms about Brexit, after she appeared to unite Remainers and Leavers in despair over her handling of last week's EU summit.
The Brexit talks are not about my interests, they are about the national interest and the interests of the whole of the United Kingdom. Serving our national interest will demand that we hold our nerve through these last stages of the negotiations, the hardest part of all.
Theresa May has survived so far for the simple reason that until now, her internal critics have lacked the numbers to move against her. But the mood is shifting. In the words of one old ally, the Prime Minister has lost her grip of the Brexit negotiations. A Brexiteer agrees.
We're hearing things that are unpalatable to Brexiteers. Number one, why are we talking about staying in the customs union? Why are we talking about extending the transition period? It's 2 years on from negotiations now. It just feels like these negotiations are running away with us and we are being an order taker by the EU. It's the time we took control. The Prime Minister needs to go and we need to replace her with a Brexiteer who believes in Brexit and who will deliver for the British people.
Downing Street has been helped by divisions over potential successors. But now the waning of Boris Johnson's star could be working against the Prime Minister as the Stop Boris campaign eases and David Davis enters the fray. But Theresa May loyalists insist that even if the 48 letters arrive, the Prime Minister will be safe.
The only person who knows that, whether there are 48 letters, is the chairman of the 22, Graham Brady. But, you know, people talk as if the letters were everything. I mean, what the letters do is presage a confidence vote. And I can guarantee you, the were there to be a confidence vote, the Prime Minister would win it and win it well.
Until now, the Prime Minister has used up more lives than Larry the Downing Street cat. This afternoon, she set out a point-by-point framework on Brexit, potentially buying herself some more time. And her internal critics used some gruesome language which rebounded on them.
No, I think she was giving flesh and blood and bones to the concept of what she has in mind. And I think that people are absolutely prepared for an understanding of the fact that this is not going to happen overnight and that she has got a proper plan. And despite the sort of criticism that comes at her from every quarter of everywhere, I think she weathered the storm really well. And I'm always saying that. I mean, I think, you know, the idea that you see the Sunday press this week, you have to wonder what planet you're living on. And the kind of weaponizing of the political news and the way they do it is absolutely absurd.
Hidden away in a secure place lurks Westminster's greatest secret. Until the magic number of 48 letters is reached, the outcome will remain a mystery.
Nick Watt. Well, with me now, Amber Rudd, Home Secretary until April this year. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. First of all, you know, the Prime Minister's insistence that 95% of the deal is done, when everybody knows that the remaining 5% is the most intractable of all. Why persist in this fiction?
Well, it's not a fiction. I mean, the fact that the last 5% is a struggle is always going to be the case with whatever the last 5% is. And I think if you'd asked people 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago, what they thought the last 5% would be, they might not have realised it was this. But here we are. It is the most significant element of trying to get a deal that the EU will accept and that works for us, and it's yet to be resolved.
You know, nothing's fixed till everything's fixed. That's the problem. We are no further forward.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, the fact that we are so far forward on most things, but that doesn't... I'm not trying to underestimate the importance of getting this one right, and it is dividing people.
But what is connecting both Remainers and Brexiteers is this idea that, you know, we have this not an end game to a transition process, that we might have extra time. Do you believe extra time is a good idea?
Listen, it's a negotiation, and I think that the fact that everybody has to compromise and move for the final 5% away from their most desired place is not a surprise, and I think we have to be flexible on it.
So you actually would support extending the transition phase?
Listen, the Prime Minister's kept it open as a possibility. I've got confidence in her bringing back a final deal which will work for us all. So if she wants to say that this is the best way to get the transition through by extending it, I will certainly listen.
You'll listen, but a month ago you said that a no deal was unlikely. A month on, do you think a no deal is more likely?
I still think a no deal will be stopped by the House of Commons. So although the legislative timeframe pushes us towards a no deal at the end of March, there are different ways of stopping it that I think will take place.
Like what?
Well, there are many different ways of stopping it. Well, you could have
Labour support?
I certainly think that the majority in the House of Commons, which, yes, includes other parties, would assert itself to stop a no deal.
Now, you have now come out quite firmly for a people's vote for a second referendum. Under what circumstances?
No. Well, what I've said is that I support the Prime Minister's deal, and the best outcome we can get is for her to bring back a negotiated settlement. If for any reason that is voted down, or if we can't get the agreement that she wants to with the EU, I think that Plan B should be going to an EA-type structure, because I think we'll need something swift, off the shelf and effective.
So wait a minute, you're talking about a Norway structure, in which case we still have to accept the 4 freedoms.
In which case, the 4 freedoms are different, Kirsty. I mean, the freedom that I know that people are most concerned about, if we did have to go the EEA route, is the freedom of movement.
Which would have to stay.
Which is fundamentally different to the the EU citizenship that we currently have. It's much more emphasis on freedom of work. But I agree with you. It is not the total independence. It is not the total independence.
Which will never, ever be worn by the hard Brexiteers. Never.
It is leaving the EU. It's no point saying it's not leaving the EU. It is. But I come back to the fact that my preferred route is to support the Prime Minister, and what she always said was going to be a bespoke settlement if we can get it.
So under what circumstances now then, clearly, will you support the idea, or would you support the idea of a second referendum? Under what circumstances?
Only if Parliament fails to resolve the issue of leaving the EU. The fact is, if the Prime Minister's deal is voted down, there will then be a series of choices, and it could be that there isn't a majority in the House, either for her deal or for an EEA. Then what happens? Do we have a people's vote? Do we have a general election? Who knows?
But you would have a people's vote. Would you have a people's vote on remaining or leaving the EU? A binary choice?
I think we'd have to talk to the Electoral Commission about it. I'm sure there are plenty of those conversations going on. But if you did have a people's vote, I think that you'd have to have Remain on the ballot paper as well. But let me be clear, it's not my favoured outcome. I want the Prime Minister to bring back a bespoke deal.
What about a general election? You mentioned it. It is, of course, what Jeremy Corbyn wants. It may indeed happen.
It would be a total failure of the House of Commons if we can't reach a majority and deliver on the referendum. And that would be, I think, the very worst outcome. Because when I talk to chief executives of businesses, they're adjusting to the outcome of the referendum. What they would really hate is a Corbyn government.
So we're in a situation now where, as Nick Watt said, there are definitely envelopes in that box calling for a vote of no confidence. There are definitely envelopes there. We just don't know how many, but they say increasing, but we're not near 48. If there was to be a leadership election, would that be a good thing for the Conservative Party or a bad thing?
I think it's a huge mistake. It would be total indulgence to think of the Conservative Party having a leadership election in the middle of these incredibly difficult negotiations. And here's the key thing. It doesn't change the numbers in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister's challenge is not only to get a deal back from the EU, but to get it through the House of Commons. If you had a new leader, it wouldn't change the amount of MPs who take one view or another.
But it might put someone in who's perhaps more persuasive.
No, I don't think that's the point. I think by this point, we all are experts in our own way on the backstop, on the differences going on between one deal and the next, and people are finding it difficult to move from their particular views.
When you ended your time abruptly as Home Secretary, you said it was unfinished business. And in fact, just recently you said you would like to go back to being Home Secretary. Would you like to lead the party?
Listen, I've got no interest in any sort of leadership talk, given that what we need is to back the Prime Minister and make sure that she has the public support of MPs so that she can get a deal in the EU. Because, listen, the EU can see what's going on here. We need to make sure they're clear that she's the Prime Minister, she's got our support.
But if she's not commanding full respect from the party, then why not go for a leadership election? Why not put in somebody perhaps like yourself?
I just really think it would be a complete mistake. It doesn't change the essence of the problem we've got here.
Andrea, thank you very much indeed.